Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the break and we are ready for our next very interesting session, which will be a panel discussion. We just had the opportunity to listen from an expert in investment readiness about some practical and very useful hints for innovative enterprises that are searching for funding and actually facing one of the major hurdle. It's scouting funding and looking for funding opportunities. But in the next session, we will dive in a bit more in the barriers and the possible strategies to overcome those barriers that our enterprises are facing in the whole journey that starts with looking for investments towards adoption and scaling up of their solution. I will leave the floor to the moderator of this session, that is Jorge Gonzalez from TIC Biomed. TIC Biomed has been co-leading together with us at the CH Alliance, the I2M initiative that I have mentioned before, and we are really pleased to have him today leading this conversation. So Jorge, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Valentina and the Alliance, for inviting me for moderating this Boosting Investments on Data-Driven Health and Care Solutions session. I think that we have a very, very interesting panel with us. We are going to talk about what are the main barriers that are preventing and delaying the adoption of personal-centered digital health solutions at the scale. And this is basically based on two European projects, Innovation to Market and Digital Health Europe. So now you know that your taxis are doing very well because we enables us to bring together this excellent group of people that I will be introducing you in a while. We have John Brennan from Westpick in Ireland, Gemma Estrada from Ferret here in Spain, Nuria Pastor from Human IT Care also in Spain, Eric Vermeulen from Ernst & Young in the Netherlands, and then Guayang Whitehouse from Ethel. So I would like that this opportunity for having this online session is very proactive and very active. We are going to have a 5-minute chat with each of the panelists, and then we are going to collect questions from your side, and then we will enter into a dynamic where we get more into question and answers. Okay. In order, for the sake of time, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to first introduce themselves and then ask 2 questions. And if we have some minutes left, we can go to all the questions that you may have, especially if there you want to clarify anything that the panelists have said. Otherwise, we will start the debate after all the panelists have spoken. So I'm Jorge Gonzalez. I'm the director of TIC Biomed. We are a business association that promotes digital health across Europe, matching between especially healthcare organizations and small and medium enterprises. And I'm very glad to introduce our first speaker, who is John Brennan from Westpick. John, can you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Thank you, Jorge. So as you mentioned, I'm John Brennan from Westpick, based in the west of Ireland here. I'm delighted to join the panel today on behalf of both Westpick and also EBN, which is the European Business and Innovation Centre Network, which includes a network of over 140 BICs similar to ourselves across Europe. So really delighted to join the group today. Our background is the west of Ireland is a real hub for medtech and med device companies, both at the corporate level, but also at the startup and scale-up level. And I think key to the development of the startup community has been the integrated range of supports within the ecosystem, including business support from the likes of Westpick and others, specialized incubators and accelerators, R&D support from the university, public sector investment from Enterprise Ireland, which is the lead enterprise agency in Ireland, and also commercialization funding from both Enterprise Ireland and universities. And finally, and really most importantly, a network of investors and syndicates who have deep knowledge and understanding of the medtech sector in Ireland. And I think that over all of those integrated sort of supports have created a really powerful and good ecosystem in our region. However,
Right.
it's not all rosy in the garden. And one of the things we have noticed in recent times is that with medtech investments maturing, we now see that investors are looking much more carefully and at a deeper level at the investments that they're making. And that creates a challenge for startups coming through the system. And I think it's probably one of the issues that we're going to address today.
Right. So building a little bit more on that, what would you say are the main challenges that digital health medtech SMEs, especially the small ones, okay, the more greener ones, face today?
Well, the key is the fundamentals. I mean, what investors are looking for, is there a clear path forward in terms of the business model? How does the business model work? Is the business model, and can the business scale in an efficient manner? Sometimes you find that, you know, that a startup will have a solution within a particular sector, within a particular area, but that may not be scalable. It may not transfer from one geographic market to another. So I think often what the investors are looking at is the detail, trying to understand how this business is going to go, how it's going to develop, and how it can be in a manner. We sometimes find as well then that investors we find tend to focus and tend to prefer maybe B2B markets, and therefore if you're looking at a B2C market, that can be an issue for them. B2B is often what they know. It's often the perception is that the margins are higher in the B2B side, and also there's a view that if you're targeting a business to consumer market, it also requires a lot of funding to gain traction, bring customers on board, and to generally scale the business.
Right.
Also, some of the issues we find with some of the startups is items like is the market ready for the product that you're actually selling? Is there an acceptance, and is there a willingness within the marketplace to take on the product that's on offer? Sometimes, for example, you might find that a care setting is not that keen on having their data tracked because it might reflect badly on the actual care setting. It's small but important issues like that can become a barrier to a startup in trying to access the marketplace.
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
Constant and ongoing challenges with startups is the funding cycle. You're continuously in a funding cycle, which means you always have to dedicate resources to the next round of funding.
Right, I understand. And regarding the instruments, the current instruments to support SMEs in our sector to help them with, especially in this case, with raising money, how do you see them? Yeah. Are they enough? Are they mature?
I think there's always room for more, and there's always room for improvement. But I think what has helped within our region has been dedicated accelerators, for example, have been really important in terms of, I suppose, sensitizing the startups to the needs of the investment community, the needs of the marketplace at an early stage, providing introductions to maybe partners, potential investors, and actually educating, I think, the startups in terms of what's required to commercialize and develop their businesses in a long-term and sustainable manner. So I think they have been absolutely crucial to the development of the sector. And there are so many accelerators out there. So it's important that the quality is there, the quality and the partnerships and the people running the accelerators have deep industry knowledge. Because I think one thing we would have seen is that you need to have people who know the sector. They need to know how the sector works. It's difficult to get your product into a hospital or a care setting.
Right.
So you need to know how that works. You need to understand how reimbursement works. So
Right.
I think that's really important. I think the EU support programs like EIT Health have also been very helpful. And any EU funding is absolutely beneficial, but it's difficult to access.
Right. Yes, I usually, you need to know the rules of the game and the map of the territory if you really want to perform very well. Thank you very much, John. Valentina,
Yes.
I don't know if there is any kind of clarified question that is to clarify anything that John has said, or I will just move them otherwise to Gemma.
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. I encourage you to submit your questions, okay? We will deal with them at the debate time. It's my pleasure to introduce you to Gemma Estrada from Ferret. Gemma, can you please tell us something about yourself and what you do at Ferret?
Thank you very much, Jorge. I'm extremely pleased to be here. So thank you to you and the Digital Health Society for the invitation to the panel. What I do at Ferret is I lead the program Ferret for Future. This is our open innovation arm to collaborate with technology-based startups. Our goal is to develop solutions that can provide patients with, of course, better clinical outcomes, but also more knowledge about their conditions and more control about their treatments and higher level of care, higher level of comfort. So I come from the field of clinical trials. I spent 25 years doing clinical development. And the main concern was always in my team was always to provide a good participant experience to the clinical trial participant, but also a good professional experience to the investigator, a good frictionless experience. And anyone who's been a PI in a clinical trial knows what friction is about, right? So from here, from providing a good experience, especially a good human experience, the human side of the experience to the participant, and the good professional experience to the investigator, transitioning to digital health, it was a very natural evolution. So I'm going to tell you everything you want to know about this Ferret for Future program and how we support startups from there.
Okay, awesome. But why this Ferret for Future? I mean, why digital health and combining with the startups? Because people may say, okay, but pharma has a lot of money. Why do they need to partner with startups or small and medium enterprises?
Okay, so we launch challenges to the ecosystem every year. We launch a number of challenges and we interact in the scouting process. We end up interacting with over 100 startups every year, at least 100. So what we find is that, yes, indeed, the number of accelerators and the number of options for startups in accelerating programs is very high. It has skyrocketed in the past couple of years. That's true. And this is very good. It's a good thing, and especially for startups on the seed phases. Yet, when we speak to them, many startups, they mention that they have been through a couple of such acceleration programs already. They have received mentoring, they have expanded their networks, they have received even bits of money, bits of capital in exchange for equity. But at the point when they come to us, they are very ready to find clients. And I guess that here is where pharma might come in. In the Ferret for Future program, what we do is that we offer the winners to collaborate with Ferret, usually through a commercial agreement. So Ferret for Future is not a CVC arm of a pharma company. We do not take equity from startups. We have a cool thing. We think it's cool because it is bespoke to each individual collaboration. Startups that join us, they do not have to join training programs in batches. They do not need to go very heavy due diligences as they would if they were going to be invested by a CVC.
Right.
So we offer them something that is a little bit different. They do not have to compete for attention and support and resources because the program is very small. We invest actually in their asset. We do not invest in the company itself.
Right.
We help them transition the cool technology, the asset that they already have, into our use case, into the challenge that we have launched. And that's usually done through a co-development period. And then this is followed by a pilot study. So we first pivot their solution into our use case. Secondly, we pilot that solution in a clinical trial. And then, should the results be good, we come to a commercial agreement.
Right. And
that's what,
during the years that you have been implementing this program, Gemma, what are the main lessons learned? What are your main takeouts?
Okay. Yeah, this there's maybe two answers to this question. We seem to have made some progress. We have learned things. So in the relationship side between the corporate and the startup, I mean, we're working much smoothly now. So we are not extinguishing fires every week anymore. So we have learned some things. The corporate teams, we have come to work in an agile manner. We have reduced our decision-making processes. We have opened effective communication channels between corporate and startups. So on the relationship side, we've learned this much. But there's two other things that I think we have learned. One is that speed matters. One can buy anything but time. And that's a very good lesson that we've learned the hard way. The second one is that when it comes to digital health solutions, and this is something that John mentioned earlier also, there is not a lot of experience on how to deliver a compelling proof of pharmacoeconomic benefit to the healthcare system. So it is tricky to get reimbursed in most European markets. So the path, by not having this well-established framework for establishing pricing and reimbursement, is a challenge. So what we've learned is that this pathway to successful commercialization needs to be paved together between the corporate and the startup. Even though one would guess that because the corporate is very used to navigate the regulatory environment and the commercialization and the pricing negotiations, I mean, this is a different situation now. This is not drugs anymore, and it needs to be done together.
Right. Thank you very much, Gemma. Super interesting. Hopefully there are more questions during the debate time about this. And Nuria Pastor, it seems that there are many more instruments to support small and medium enterprises, and things seem to be easier than some years ago. What is the reality in your case?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jorge. And first of all, I will introduce briefly myself. I am Nuria, and I am the Chief Executive Officer at Human IT Care. And what we do at Human IT Care is to provide a remote patients monitoring platform to reduce the cost of readmission in the hospital. So, we have seen that more and more the funds that we have, the startups for health projects especially, are bigger, but also they are very difficult to get. But I think that that's what makes the successful later of this funding in the companies a good outcomes for that investment. And I will explain you, at least in Human IT Care, we have been receiving 400,000 euros from the IT Health and the European Commission with the small and SME instrument, is the small and medium enterprise instrument. And what we like of this kind of fundings are that you have to demonstrate outcomes, and you have a very strict plan that you have to follow, and you have to achieve that outcomes, and that rigorosity of the process. I think that it's very good for the ecosystem, because not all the solutions sometimes can demonstrate that results, and this is important. But it's true that there are another ways to get funding for a company, for a startup, that are VCs. And also what we are exploring and seeing more and more, that it's the VCs are also the VCs that are specialized on healthcare are also very well they have a very well knowledge on the trends of the market and the adoption for the user, and that's a good thing for us and for the ecosystem.
Fantastic. And regarding your journey and the key success points or approaches that you have taken in order to get you where you are now, what would you say they are?
For us, and I agree with Eric and Gemma, the most now like a challenging point is the reimbursement. We are working with private institution in Spain, as for example, Rivera Salud Group, and also with pharma companies, as also, for example, Ferret. But the public one, I think that it's a general challenge for all the European countries. But we have to say that in the recent months, we have seen a lot of public procurements specialized and with a very good groups supporting this kind of procurements, and that's also a good thing to see that these procurements are in an European level, and also that makes that the innovation really goes in a public way to the hospitals, right? And also this collaboration for not only one country. That's a good thing, but we also believe that it's on health, especially when you have to demonstrate results, to demonstrate science, to demonstrate that these tools are also useful for patients in a digital way. The process, the legislation and the regulatory process has to be as quickly as the technology development, and maybe this is the most challenging point now. But also we have to say that in all this year for the COVID-19 and for the pandemic, we have seen that the interest of especially like telemedicine and these new tools that are helping in a real way the doctors has been growing the demand and the needs. And what we hope is that with all these changes that we have experienced with doctors and patients, by using then our solution and other solutions that are digital, that this change really could make an impact, not for a short term, but also for a long term.
Right. And now that you mentioned the pandemic, how has been the adaptation to the new situation? What things have you done internally so to adapt your organization and your logistics and etc., all the departments to the new situation, Nuria?
Yeah. Okay. So in our case, we see two things when we were in the lockdown. The first of all, that our tool, the value proposition of our tool, which is remote patients monitoring, was now like a need for doctors. And with the team of doctors that we have, like some talks and other that were using our solution, we decided to put for free, and we arrived to 7 hospitals for free with our solution by using a pulse oximeter. So it was like a first value that we did, and I have to say that all the team has been doing a good work on that. Of course, we have to put more people working at human IT care, especially in the IT department, and we have hired people from IT during the pandemic. And also in terms of regulatory, we also have experience that, for example, the MDR, which is the new the medical device regulation, the new law of CE marks, it has also expanded. So we have been also working on that to get all the requirements that they need. And also it means that with the regulatory team, we have been also having a lot of work on that. But the experience is that, and the final conclusions are that the ecosystem has been living really a change. And now I think that are like more the decisions from the government, and the last decisions are, okay, how can the governments and the European Commission can benefit for this real innovation? And I'm not only talking about digital health, but also, for example, with other projects that we have seen in biotech, how the government and the European Commission really get used to this innovation and can centralize all these big innovations to the society.
Right. Thank you very much, Nuria.
Thank you so much.
We'll continue at the debate time. And now we move to Eric from the Netherlands. Eric, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Jorge. Yes, Eric, I work at EY in the Netherlands. I have 24 years of experience in digital transformation, of which are 14 years in digital health. Also leading the health consulting practice in the Netherlands and the global solution lead Smart Hospital. If you Google Smart Hospital and EY, you will see a very cool video, I think, showcasing what work we did at Erasmus Medical Center, which is a true, very innovative, modern facility. What we do at EY, just to give you some background there, is in the context for the SMEs and innovators. We do market access studies. We develop roadmaps for life sciences and health companies. We have a special program called the EY Innovation Program, which is a way where we can give financial, tax advice or all other kind of legal advice to the SMEs, who of course we hope will grow to large unicorns, and everybody will hope, of course. So that's a bit of my background, Jorge.
Right. But in your work, I guess that you also interact with healthcare providers in the Netherlands and likely abroad. How do you see how healthcare providers, public and private, they are getting along with the digital transformation, or at least in their digitalization efforts?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think that when you are talking about transformation, it depends on the country and the country system. So what we did is we performed some international studies in over a dozen countries to figure out, and these are the dozen countries who consider themselves in the benchmarking and stuff like that as more advanced digital countries. And we try to figure out for our clients, is there a common denominator? Is there a copy-paste solution from one country to the other country? And I can tell you there is none. So it's not a copy-paste. And that's also because there are many differences from one country to the other. And so if you look at some countries, they are HMO-led. So take Israel for very large HMOs. Take the US, many very large HMOs. But some are more region-led, like Canada, region-led, and other countries are region-led. And some are more dominantly country-led. Sometimes a smaller country, like Estonia, or the UK, a large country. So it depends on what country you enter, also as a company who wants to bring new solutions, to first understand how does the country and the system work. And then when you dive into the connected care space and sharing data, there are many efforts by all the countries to share data, but if you look at it, they are not very successful to date, because much of the data sharing is document based, and that's because in healthcare the semantics are really, really complex. So if you take all the data put in by a doctor in an EMR, it has many data structures, and for now it's more sharing documents, summaries and stuff like that. That's not the future, we believe. What we also see is that there is a distinction between some countries choose for a patient-led exchange, others for a provider-led exchange. So is it sharing provider to provider, or is it sharing to the patient and the patient shares with providers?
Right.
Yeah, many differences there.
Right, and the relationship between these healthcare providers and the ecosystem of SMEs and startups and other players, probably close geographically to them. How are there any changes in the last years? How do you see that evolving?
What we see is that the ecosystem is rapidly evolving. So there are many players trying to come up with new digital health solutions, because from a disease point of view and a patient point of view, there's a lot to win. We see medtech companies gearing up and providing solutions. But there's a lot happening, and that's a big but, everybody forgets that in the end, it has to come together at one employee, one person being a doctor. And doctors look different at solutions than patients. So a patient will buy the latest smartwatch from brand A, B, or C, which is cool, etc., etc. But doctors won't trust that. So you will have to come up with solutions actually with proven measured outcomes, as mentioned by Nuria as well. and doctors don't want to switch from one screen to the other screen to the other screen to the other screen.
Right.
And CIOs in hospitals, they don't want to integrate all kind of shifty solutions, in their opinion, with all kind of security breaches lurking. So I think that that's the biggest mistake you can make, is to forget that there's not only a patient, but there's also a doctor. And the doctor has to work in a connected network with a lot of legacy systems, which is really complex. Yeah.
Right. Completely agree. Thank you very much, Eric. And last but not least, we have Diane for Ethel. Diane, can you please tell us more about you and your work in Ethel?
Hello, thank you very much for inviting me on board. Much appreciated and great to be with you all today. My name is Diane Whitehouse, and I'm Ethel's Principal Policy Analyst in terms of e-health. ETEL itself, the European Health Telematics Association, is a not-for-profit organization, membership-based, a multi-stakeholder platform. And to repeat one of the words that we've heard many of my fellow panelists saying today, it's really about focusing on ecosystems, whether those are people's ecosystems or whether they're data ecosystems. So the focus of my work is generally policy. And I will draw, when I talk today, on two of the recent initiatives that we've been involved with the European Connected Health Alliance and with Innovation to Market. And I can draw more on that information.
Please do so. What do you think, I mean, what is the main work out of these projects, Diane?
Right. Interesting. They're really focused on ecosystems. They've really focused on stakeholders, and they've really focused on hearing all the different voices involved in the landscape. Of course, one of the principal drivers has been demand and supply. And has really been about looking at what different business models should be involved, what different forms of financing and schemes. On the one hand, I think Innovation to Market in particular has had some real key high spots around its workshops, around its teaching and training. We've seen a great example already this morning, and around the award schemes that it developed. I think we will see more of those assets on the various websites, and I think we'll see a real grounding of this connectedness and connectivity among stakeholders in the future. In terms of Digital Health Europe, clearly its focus has been on finding digital solutions in health and care, let's say integrated care, and working towards a set of guidelines that can help influence European, national, regional policy.
Right. Especially in this Digital Health Europe, I think that you have identified several barriers for SMEs. Can you please name them and perhaps provide some clue about the potential solutions?
Right. Well, in terms of challenges, I think it's really been around it's really been around finance. That's for sure. It's always clear.
Show me the money, or is that the...
Well, and then of course that's the obvious question is, show me the money, give me the money. But then clearly, what do I do with this? And what do I do with this that is sound, that is grounded, and that is going to meet the market? So I think what our small and our medium-sized enterprises in particular feel, and many of our panelists today have come up with great solutions to this, is not only get me access to where the great accelerators are, to where the good investment schemes are, show me then how to work with them, help train me in all these approaches, and basically get me part either locally grounded or nationally grounded, help me to understand the context and the current incentives and motivations.
Excellent. Any other barrier or solution that you may think regarding especially small and medium enterprises in digital health and medtech? Anything else that you would like to share out of these two projects, or any other source that you may find interesting?
Yeah, I think we've all got to watch. I'm speaking here with a kind of European hat, I think, but I think internationally, we've really got to all watch where we go with today's pandemic and the infectious diseases, and hence, what are the items that we need to work on most quickly, with the best speed, with the best agility. So there are some great opportunities coming up in terms of funding and investment around COVID-19. But I think at an operational level, in a way, it's about coming close to your digital health innovation hubs, your local accelerators, and I think focusing on co-design and the kinds of tools and techniques that can be used, especially to measure, evaluate, assess the success of your potential solutions.
Right. We are about to finish the panelist, but I would like to encourage that everybody starts addressing questions. If it is very specific to one of the speakers, please type the name, say for Diane, for John, or whoever, and then put it in the chat, and then Valentina will help me to address them. Finally, Diane, before we move to the debate, the magic word reimbursement has been mentioned several times in this debate. Any idea what could be done in the, I don't know, in the European level, national level, any ideas?
Right. I suspect that we're going to see it very high on the agenda. My assumption is along the lines that Eric from EY was saying. You know, there's huge variety at the present moment, huge diversity in those systems and schemes, and what would be interesting to explore is how those schemes can come together. Let's say no one size fits all, but what kind of modification, what kind of mergers there can be. I think there'll be reimbursement in terms of the epidemic, the pandemic. I think there'll be reimbursement at different reimbursement schemes at national level. I was struck, for example, recently, a German example, by the kind of very rapid move towards digital solutions, the DIGA scheme, which really allows fast tracking around medical devices and around consultancy solutions for the people at large. So I think we're beginning to see good examples, not only in insurance schemes that have a more Bismarckian orientation, but also those which are based more around beverage schemes. And I also think we're going to see at local levels or regional levels, let's say, innovation around blended financing. So bringing together these various levels of international, national, and regional together.
Right. That's great. I mean, we all hope that the sample of Germany really catch up. Now that seems that at football they are not doing as well as before, especially yesterday. And we have a question for...
I have to say, Jorge, I think given the fact that they have the current presidency of the European Union, and that is ongoing for 6 to 8 weeks, then let's watch that space. Let's watch the announcements. There were already some 2 weeks ago.
The sample that they are setting with the reimbursement of apps and so on, I think is great. So let's see if we catch up on the rest of Europe. We have a kind of 2 questions for Gemma. I will read them. How do we assure the needs of the patients are served in a primary commercial setting? How can all patients can benefit also when certain groups are not interesting for companies? Gemma, you are muted.
Apologies. Thank you for the question. I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer about the primary care setting, since our experience and our main focus is on hospital specialties. However, I think I would look on favorable safety profiles eventually, and also maybe trying to drive the health economic benefit, right? Looking at how we decrease the healthcare professional visits, I think. But as I said, our main focus is on chronic conditions, and I cannot speak very much for primary care. I hope I have answered a little bit.
Right, and the second one, Gemma?
What was the second question again?
How can all patients benefit also when certain groups are not interesting for companies? I guess that they are referring to rare diseases.
Orphan diseases, yeah.
Maybe.
I mean, digital health does have the potential to reach patients with rare diseases, and because the ability of cutting costs in the delivery is there through the technology, there is chances of making even those rare diseases more cost efficient than they used to be. So my view is that yes, digital health brings some hope to those quote diseases not so much interesting for companies. That would be my view.
Right. I really encourage the audience to submit their questions. Valentina is sharing them with us in the chat. I don't see we have more. So I have a question to John. And John, you were saying that support has to get more and more specialized, more and more verticalized, so to say, in order to deliver as much value. At the beginning, they were accelerators, but mainly a lot of them, they were kind of horizontal. Now we are seeing that they tend to be more and more specialized and delivering more value. Where do you see that future? I mean, you will think that there will be the support programs, they need to be more and more mature, I guess, and more professionalized. Where do you see that, say, in 3 years? What will be the typical business support scenario landscape that we will have in Europe, for example?
I think there have been so many accelerators in the overall ecosystem for so long. I think what you're probably going to see and what we see here is that more specialization and bringing in people into those accelerators that know that particular sector. And I think this is particularly true of the medtech sector. You need to understand the sector, and ideally you need to have people involved that know the sector from both the corporate level, at the care setting level, whether it's care home or a hospital or whatever. And also then you need to know, obviously, you need to have business development people there as well that know how you can convert an idea into a commercially viable business proposition. So I certainly think that, yes, what we have seen and what the accelerators that really work in our region have been the ones that are focused and specialized. And I think they take a deep dive into the problem area, and they try and assess in the first instance what's the problem, and then how can we develop solutions around that and take it from there then in terms of introductions to key partners, introductions to investors. And I think all of that has to start at a very early stage and allow the startups to evolve and work their way through the system, because it's not easy, as everybody knows, I think, here on the panel. It's complex. And I think Eric described the health system there very clearly in terms of it's complex. It varies from one region, one country to the next. So it's trying to navigate, you're trying to navigate through a really difficult minefield to get to the end result. So I think specialization is especially important in this particular sector, and I will see that evolving over the next couple of years. I think initiatives like EIT Health through Europe, etc., have also been helpful in terms of giving additional support. SME instrument, as Noria mentioned, now EIC, accelerator, also helpful, but also difficult in terms of accessing funding. One of the other trends we see at the investor level is the investors are taking a much deeper dive into the quantitative aspects of their investments at an early stage. So they're looking to understand what's the potential in the market before they move to maybe a more qualitative assessment of the company. So they're looking at, you know, the indicators in terms of the market potential, etc., and taking account of that before they maybe move to the next stage, which is then looking at the idea, the team, and the capability to make all of that happen. And there are some platforms. EBN are working on a platform called Innovate at the minute, which is going down that particular line of thought. And also one of our investor syndicates are taking a similar approach. And I think what that reflects actually is that the investors as well are not too sure where the next big opportunity is, and they need to drill down into the detail a bit more. So this is a difficult sector, I think, but it has huge potential at the same time.
Right. John, if you don't mind typing the platform you just mentioned, so Valentina can share it with the audience.
Yep.
If you can, okay. And
sure.
Nuria, you are not any longer in a startup, so to say, you are not in your initial stages. What would you say are your main needs of external support, business support at your current stage?
Yeah, good question. I agree also with John that, for example, like the point to go to the reimbursement, now we are seeing that with, for example, IT Health and other European groups, we are trying to get a good assess on that. But I think that now the more needs are in the regulatory landscape, because what we have seen is that independent of the country that we operate, we have different needs. And this is not a clear landscape, I think, like for a lot of companies. That's one point, the regulatory landscape in Europe, which is different for countries. Maybe the second one is the reimbursement also point of view of different countries. It's not the same in Germany, which has a DIGA, and for example, Spain, and not, I'm sure, for other points from Europe. So that's the second one. And the third one could be also like this go-to-market strategy, which is also different from countries, and it's very, very similar to the reimbursement point, but it's different because in the private scenario, independent of the country, that, for example, now we also want plans for our company in the 2021, it's to pass the DIGA law, and we are working with Medical Valley on that, and also with the IT Health. And for that, it's very different, the go-to-market strategy for that market, and for the public and for the private ones, right? So in that case, I think that in general, like companies that are maybe in a growth stage, not more in a startup stage, need this kind of support in a continuous way. Also, like good webinars and good workshops help us a lot to have on mind, which are like the new regulatory frameworks and the news. And I have to say that we are very happy and we are very grateful that, for example, this kind of institutions, European institutions, have helped us a lot to be there. And we appreciate it so much.
Right. Thank you very much, Nuria. Just a couple of hints to other audience. John has just shared a link to the Innovate project that he was mentioning. This is related to a question that I will come back later to John that has been put to us. And I've shared, I'm going to do also some kind of self-publicity here. We have in the project that we have coordinated, the eHealth Hub, we develop a map of the digital health ecosystem. And one of the sectors that we are mapping are the regulatory, Nuria. So, and you can choose by country. So we know
I will take a look.
It's not so easy to find the right person. I have to say that our experience is that these people are so well paid, and there are so few of them that it's very hard for startups and SMEs to work with them because they tend to work more with the big guys. But still, there are some of them that they are
perfect. Thank you so much,
friendly and very accessible. So please check these links that Valentina has sent. I have a question for Eric before moving to John with a question that we have, and that is, Eric, you have mentioned before several countries in Europe with different organizations, probably the most advanced in terms of the digital transformation, which at least for me is different from digitalization. Can you tell us some kind of good examples of organizations that, in your opinion, think that they are doing right this digital transition? Some best practices or something that has surprised or impressed you?
Yeah, well, the example everybody knows is Estonia. Estonia is not a very large country, but what they did very smart is that they had already a governmental infrastructure to share all kinds of messages. X-Road, it's open source based solution. And on top of that layer, they implemented a national health record as well. And that, I think that's pretty advanced what they did. Also with blockchain, with privacy by design, stuff like that. So I think Estonia is a very good example. Another one very advanced is at least in sharing data on a national level and enforcing that is Austria. But the solution itself is document based. So in the end, for the clinician, they don't get a longitudinal record, they just get a pile of documents where they have to shift through. So that's not, from a clinician point of view, not a very user-friendly thing, but it's well implemented across the country, and it's mandatory to do that. One solution close by to me in Amsterdam, it's not in Amsterdam but in the Netherlands, and this is a very promising evolution, is that the Netherlands is building out a FHIR federation. FHIR is a standard for interoperability, and what they did is that the overarching patient federation in the Netherlands, who have been looking at sharing data with patients for as long as I'm active, so 15 years, they are trying to push on a national level, come on guys, the patient should own that data. And now they came up with a solution where they created mainly the governance to open up providers and to have personal health clouds. And the trick there is that they have a lightweight solution based on FHIR and OAuth, which on a national level is just a bit more than a whitelist. But to get on that whitelist, either as a provider or as a patient cloud provider, you have to live up to and sign up all kinds of agreements and stuff like that. And what does that mean is that there is a trust in that ecosystem with an open vendor neutral standard. And now we have already approximately 35 personal health clouds, mainly disease focused or remote patient monitoring focused, stuff like that, being certified. So in the trust. And on the other side, a bit less than 10 really dominant solution providers opening up the provider space and the data from those providers. And that's growing by the month. So this is being kicked off, I think, 2-3 years ago. And now they are really hitting the curve and scaling. And the good news is that now in the Netherlands, I think we have a common backbone based on an open modern standard, FHIR, to support shared care. So that's a good example as well, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Eric. John, there is a question for you regarding the self-assessment of investment readiness of SMEs in our space. How do they work? What advantages do they have? Can you enlighten us about them?
So I think the self-assessment is more a case of the models that we've seen so far, and I haven't huge experience in the workings of these because a lot of them are still at an early stage of being developed, but some of them are based on the Korean rating system, technology and innovation rating system, where they look at multiple quantitative indicators. I imagine things like market size, the potential, the transferability from one region to another, and they come up with a rating for the startup at a very early stage in terms of the first level assessment, if you want to call it that. That then, if that highlights a favorable assessment for the startup, usually the investors are then willing to move to the next stage, which is to dig a bit deeper and look at more of the qualitative aspects, which would include, for example, the team's experience, their ability to move this forward, their advisory team, their contacts and partnerships within the market space, etc. And it's the combination of both, if you like, then the quantitative and the qualitative aspects that would maybe encourage then investors to take the next step and invest in that particular company. So the Korean rating system apparently has been hugely successful in terms of assessing and picking the winners from an investment perspective. And I think investors now are looking to bring that type of model to Europe, and Innovate is one of the projects programs that's trying to develop that type of system at the minute. It's not there at the minute, but they are offering webinars and training and mentoring opportunities to sensitize startups to the needs of these assessments and to generally prepare them for investment readiness down the road. So I think it's probably something we're going to see a lot more of in the future. And as I mentioned already, one of the syndicates that we are currently working with have introduced this model as well. And it's just been introduced, so we will see over the next 6 to 12 months how it evolves and how successful it is.
Right. And do you have any link or something we can share with the audience about this? Or if so, please let us know when it's available.
It hasn't gone live yet, so I can't share it at the minute. But
right. Please share when it's available, so we will try to disseminate through our networks.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. I will just thank all of you. I mean, I don't know if Diane has like 30 seconds. Once in 30 seconds, say what opportunities are ahead regarding the two projects that she mentioned before, I2M and Digital Health Europe. 30 seconds, Diane, and then we are about to close. Yeah. And anything that is upcoming that could be of interest to our audience?
I think watch the two websites. All the latest news is on there. I fully expect that in 2021, there will be ongoing initiatives to be announced publicly as well. Let's look forward to that. And in terms of some of the initiatives mentioned, including Digital Health, I know that they are coming together in one of our own ETEL symposium that takes place on the 2nd and the 3rd of December. So we're happy to invite people along and to hear more about issues like health data space, data sharing, and also the work on mobile health and digital health. Thank you very much indeed. It's been a fascinating panel. Really learned a lot.
Well, I want to finish by thanking all the panelists. I think that you guys have done a great job in putting to the audience about what is the current state of the art of where we are. I mean, we all know that health is not easy, but that's not why we are here. It's because it is worthy. So thank you very much for your time and your brains putting into this panel. Thank you very much for the organizers for inviting us. Over to you, Valentina.